My name is Clara Sterling. I am 36 years old, and I am an urban planner. It's a profession that sounds more technical than it is. At its heart, my work is about imagining futures for communities, about laying out the bones of a place, the parks, the public squares, the pedestrian-friendly streets where life can unfold in all its messy, beautiful detail. I find the soul of a city in its blueprints. For years, my life was a blueprint I co-authored with my husband, Ethan. We lived in Portland, a city of bridges and rain, of rose gardens and fiercely independent coffee shops. Our home was a modest bungalow in the Laurelhurst neighborhood with a garden that Ethan, a landscape architect, had turned into a miniature Eden. My younger sister, Sophie, lived a life less structured. 2 years my junior, she was the artist of the family, a whirlwind of creative projects that started with fiery passion and often ended in quiet abandonment. She painted, she made pottery, she designed jewelry. Our parents, both retired academics, saw her as the fragile, sensitive one, while I was the steadfast, capable one. They nurtured her dreams with financial support and endless encouragement, and they applauded my achievements from a proud but respectful distance. Clara has it all figured out, my mother would say, a statement that was meant as a compliment but always felt like a dismissal of any struggles I might have. There was no overt rivalry between us, not in the way you might imagine. Sophie didn't try to outshine me. She simply existed in a different orbit, one that demanded more gravitational pull from our parents. I loved her, but I often felt like I was loving her from across a widening expanse, a space filled with her unfinished canvases and my carefully drafted plans. I accepted my role as the reliable daughter, the one who didn't need as much. It was a pattern set so early in our lives that questioning it felt like questioning the laws of nature. Ethan was the one who saw past the facade of my confidence. He understood the quiet anxieties behind my organized life, the vulnerability beneath the professional veneer. We met at a city planning commission meeting where he was presenting a design for a new riverfront park. I was captivated not just by his elegant drawings, but by the way he spoke about creating a space for quiet contemplation and joyful noise. He understood the poetry of a place. Our love story was written in the language of our shared passions. We spent weekends exploring Portland's neighborhoods, sketching ideas on cafe napkins, dreaming of the family we would one day raise in the city we adored. We married on a crisp autumn day in the Hoyt Arboretum, surrounded by the quiet dignity of ancient trees. Our future felt as solid and well-planned as one of my own designs. But life, as I of all people should know, rarely follows a blueprint. When I turned 32, we decided it was time to add a joyful noise to our quiet home. We tried for a year, then another. The silence in our house grew heavier with each passing month. Finally, we sought help, and the clinical language of infertility entered our poetic world. Diminished ovarian reserve, they called it. My body, it seemed, was on a different timeline than my life plan. The recommendation was immediate IVF. The process was a quiet invasion. The daily injections, the early morning appointments at the Haven Fertility Center, the hormonal swells that left me weepy and exhausted. Ethan was my anchor through it all. He held my hand during every ultrasound. He learned to administer the shots with a gentle proficiency, and when I cried from the weight of it all, he would simply hold me and whisper, "We're building something beautiful, Clara." It just takes more scaffolding than we thought. Our efforts yielded 4 viable embryos. 4 tiny clusters of cells, a constellation of our shared hopes. Our specialist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, suggested a transfer, but a fellowship I'd been offered a chance to work on a post-earthquake revitalization project in Valparaiso, Chile was fast approaching. It was an incredible opportunity, one Ethan had encouraged me to pursue long before our fertility struggles began. We decided to freeze the embryos. "They'll be our little time capsules," Ethan said, his eyes bright with optimism as we looked at their microscopic images. "They'll wait for us. When you come back from Chile, we'll be ready." Ethan never saw me come back. 2 months before I was scheduled to leave, he was killed in a cycling accident on the Hawthorne Bridge. A driver, blinded by the evening sun glinting off the Willamette River, hadn't seen him. The blueprint of our life was not just altered, it was incinerated. In the white-hot fog of grief, the embryos became something else. They were no longer a pause button, they were a reliquary. They were the last living piece of Ethan, the only tangible evidence of the future we had meticulously planned. The fellowship in Chile, once a career ambition, became a lifeline, a reason to get out of bed, a way to channel my grief into something constructive. Before leaving, I put my life in order with the precision of a traumatized planner. I arranged for a colleague to rent our bungalow. I set up automatic payments for every conceivable bill. And I gave my sister, Sophie, my medical power of attorney. It seemed the logical choice. She was family, she was in Portland, and I trusted her. I explained it was for emergencies, in case something happened to me in Chile. I never imagined the emergency she would create. The phone rang on a Tuesday morning in my small apartment, perched on one of Valparaiso's kaleidoscopic hills. The Pacific Ocean stretched out, vast and indifferent, below my window. I had been in Chile for nearly a year, and the work, the vibrant culture, and the sheer distance had created a fragile layer of scar tissue over my grief. Clara Sterling, a cheerful voice asked. "This is Jessica from the Haven Fertility Center in Portland. I'm just calling with some wonderful news. Dr. Reed wanted me to be the first to congratulate you on your successful transfer." The world tilted. The colorful houses outside my window seemed to slide down the hill. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice thin. "There must be a mistake. I'm in Chile." A pause crackled across the 6,000 miles of ocean and land separating us. "Oh, let me transfer you to Dr. Reed's office." The wait was an eternity filled with a frantic shuffling of impossible possibilities. A clerical error. A cruel joke. Dr. Reed's voice, when it came, was heavy with a gravity I knew all too well. "Clara, I am so sorry. I've just pulled your file. Your sister, Sophie, came in 8 weeks ago. She had your power of attorney and all the necessary identification. She requested a transfer of 2 of your stored embryos." My breath caught in my throat. "I never authorized that. Ever." "The documentation appeared to be in order, Dr. Reed said, her professional tone fraying at the edges. "She signed the consent forms. She claimed you had discussed it, that you wanted her to act as a surrogate while you completed your work abroad. Had I been here that day, I would have insisted on speaking with you directly. I am launching a full internal review. Clara, the transfer was successful. She's pregnant." The floor fell away. Pregnant. With my embryos. With Ethan's children. "Which ones?" I whispered, a desperate, nonsensical question. 2 of the 4. She requested the 2 with the highest grading. "Clara, I am profoundly sorry for this breach. We will do everything." I hung up before she could finish, my hand trembling so violently I could barely set the phone down. I stumbled to the balcony, gulping the cool, salt-laced air, but it felt like I was breathing dust. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word. This was an excavation. Sophie had reached into the most sacred, protected part of my life, the part one had sealed away with Ethan's memory, and plundered it. It took me hours to compose myself enough to call her. When she answered, her voice was light, infused with a feathery warmth that turned my blood to ice. "Clara. Hi. How's Chile? Is it amazing?" "Cut the act, Sophie," I said, my voice dangerously level. "I just got a call from the Haven Fertility Center." The silence that followed was not one of shock, but of calculation. "Oh," she said finally. "I was going to tell you. I was just waiting for the right time, until I was safely in the 2nd trimester." "Tell me what?" "That you stole a part of my body? That you took the last piece of Ethan I had left in this world." "I didn't steal anything," her voice hardened, the familiar defensiveness rising. "They were just frozen, Clara. They were in limbo. You're thousands of miles away, you might never have used them. I gave them a chance to live. They were not yours to give a chance to. They were mine and Ethan's." I was shouting now, my voice echoing in the small apartment. The vibrant murals on the buildings across the hill seemed to mock me with their joy. Ethan would have wanted them to be born, she said, and the use of his name was a physical blow. He wouldn't have wanted them to be forgotten in a freezer while you were off building cities for strangers. Don't you dare tell me what Ethan would have wanted. You barely knew the man I married. Well, Mom and Dad agree with me, she shot back, a trump card she had clearly been holding. They're thrilled. They're finally going to be grandparents. The betrayal cascaded, a domino effect of collapsing trust. She had not only done this, she had sold it to our parents as a noble act. She had co-opted my grief and Ethan's legacy to fulfill her own desires, and she had enlisted our family as her accomplices. This isn't over, Sophie. What you did is illegal. A small, triumphant laugh came through the phone. Is it? I had your power of attorney, Clara. Medical decisions. And what are you going to do anyway? Fly back here and try to force me to have an abortion? How would that look? The cold, career-obsessed sister trying to destroy her nurturing sister's miracle pregnancy. She had thought of everything. The cruelty was as meticulous as one of my own blueprints. I thought you'd be happy, she added, her voice softening into a sickening imitation of concern. You're so busy, so important. I'm taking care of this for you. I'm giving them the home you can't. I ended the call. I sat on my balcony until the sun dipped into the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange. She hadn't just stolen embryos. She had stolen my narrative, my future, my connection to Ethan. She had taken our beautiful, private dream and twisted it into a public spectacle of her own making. The architect of my own life had just had her foundation dynamited by her own sister. The call to my mother was even harder. I dialed her number the next day, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. Clara, Sophie told me you called, my mother began, her voice brittle with preemptive defense. You need to calm down and think about this situation rationally. Rationally? Mom, she committed fraud. She stole from me. She didn't steal, my mother insisted, her voice rising. She is giving life to your and Ethan's children. She and David can provide a stable, loving home. She's been wanting a baby for so long, you know that. This is a blessing. It was my blessing to decide on. They were my children to carry, in my own time, when I was ready to build a life again. Then came the words that fractured the final vestiges of our relationship. Frankly, Clara, you chose your path. You have your career, your travel, your ambitions. Sophie chose family. She deserves this chance at motherhood. In a way, she deserves it more. She deserves it more. The phrase echoed in the hollow space where my trust in my family used to be. It was the culmination of a lifetime of their skewed perception. Sophie the needy, deserving one, Clara the self-sufficient one who could absorb any loss. My success had become a liability, a reason my own dreams were considered expendable. I hung up the phone and felt a profound, chilling loneliness. My allies, my history, my home, they had all sided with the person who had wronged me. My grief for Ethan was suddenly compounded by a new, sharper grief for the family I thought I had. Returning to Portland was like stepping into a distorted reflection of my own life. The familiar green of the city felt menacing, the misty rain like a shroud. I took an emergency leave from my fellowship in Chile, leaving behind a project I loved and a life I had been carefully rebuilding. I checked into a hotel downtown, unable to face the thought of staying in my own home, which Sophie's husband, David, was apparently now helping her prepare for a nursery. My first meeting was with Victoria Grant, a lawyer specializing in reproductive law. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor that was a balm to my frayed nerves. We met in her office, which overlooked the Willamette River, the same river that had taken Ethan from me. This is a case of reproductive fraud, identity theft, and conversion of property, Victoria stated after I had laid out the entire sordid story. The power of attorney is a complication, but it was intended for decisions regarding your health, not for the appropriation of your genetic material. It's a gross misapplication. She was practical, precise, and validating. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. What do we do? First, we arrange a meeting. We put them on notice that you are not going to let this stand. We need to see their reaction, to understand what we're up against. The meeting took place at my parents' house, a location chosen by my mother to project a sense of family unity that no longer existed. I walked in to find Sophie seated on the sofa, a hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. She was wearing a soft, flowing dress, the very picture of blooming, innocent motherhood. My parents flanked her like sentinels. Her husband, David, a kind but perpetually flustered high school history teacher, hovered nervously by the fireplace. "Clara," my father began, his voice strained. "We're all family here. Surely we can find a solution without lawyers." "What solution do you propose, Dad?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "Can you turn back time? Can you put my children back where they belong?" Sophie flinched at the word, "my." "They're not just things, Clara," she said softly, her eyes welling up with practiced tears. "They are babies. Our babies." "They're not our babies, Sophie. They are mine and Ethan's. You used a legal document to steal them." "I was helping you," she cried, turning to our mother for support. "Mom, tell her. We talked about it. I'm giving them a family." My mother placed a comforting arm around Sophie's shoulders, glaring at me. "This stress is not good for the pregnancy, Clara. Your sister is doing a beautiful, selfless thing." I looked at David, who had been silent, his face a mask of discomfort. "Did you know about this, David? Did you know she was going to do this without my consent?" He shifted his weight, unable to meet my eyes. "Sophie said she said you two had discussed it. That you were okay with her being a surrogate, that the paperwork was just a formality because you were so far away." "And you believe that?" "I wanted to," he mumbled, his gaze falling to the floor. "We want a family so much." Victoria, who had remained a quiet observer, finally spoke. Her voice cut through the emotional haze with surgical precision. "What your daughter has done," she said, addressing my parents, "constitutes several felonies. We have filed for an emergency injunction and will be filing a civil suit to establish Clara's full parental rights. I suggest you advise your daughter to retain counsel immediately." The room fell silent. The carefully constructed narrative of Sophie's selfless act had just been legally defined as a crime. As we left, I felt the weight of my parents' shocked and angry stares on my back. The battle lines had been drawn not in a courtroom, but in the living room where I had grown up. The legal battle was slow and agonizing. The story was picked up by local media, and the narrative Sophie had predicted began to take shape. I was painted as the cold, ambitious career woman trying to claim babies from the warm, nurturing sister who was actually carrying them. Public opinion, fueled by my mother's carefully curated stories to friends and neighbors, was not on my side. Sophie and David's church started a meal train for them. Friends threw them a pre-baby shower. They were the brave couple overcoming obstacles to have their miracle family, and I was the obstacle. Victoria warned me to stay off social media, but the headlines were unavoidable. A sister's gift or a sister's theft? The preliminary hearing was a surreal experience. I sat in a courtroom listening to Sophie's lawyer describe her profound desire for motherhood and my apparent indifference, evidenced by my international fellowship. He argued for the best interests of the children, a phrase that felt like a dagger, suggesting that their best interests lay with their kidnapper. The judge, a cautious man, ruled to maintain the status quo, refusing to make any orders that could affect the ongoing pregnancy. It was a loss, but Victoria assured me it was expected. The real fight is establishing your parental rights, and that happens after the full hearing. The weight of it all was crushing. I felt unmoored, fighting a battle on a front I had never been trained for. My work had always been about structure, logic, and long-term vision. This was chaos, emotion, and a present that was slipping through my fingers. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected source. A week after the hearing, I received a text from an unknown number. "Can we meet? It's David. Please don't tell Sophie." We met at a small, anonymous coffee shop in a suburb miles from our respective neighborhoods. David looked haggard, his face etched with a sleepless anxiety. He slid a slim portfolio across the table. "I found this in her art studio," he said, his voice a low whisper. "I was looking for a sketchbook she wanted me to frame, and I found this hidden behind some old canvases." I opened it. Inside were not drawings, but pages and pages of notes in Sophie's familiar, looping script. There were printouts of the fertility clinic's protocols, with sections on power of attorney highlighted. There were lists of questions she had apparently asked clinic staff over the phone. But the most damning pages were at the back. Page after page of her practicing my signature. My full name, my initials, written over and over, getting closer and closer to a perfect forgery with each attempt. "She's been planning this for over a year," David said, his voice breaking. "Before you even left for Chile. She told me it was your idea, a gift." I was so happy I never questioned it. But since she's been pregnant, she's different. Obsessive. She talks about the babies like they're a prize she won. It's not right, Clara. This whole life we're living feels like a lie. Will you testify to this, David? Will you give this to my lawyer? He shook his head, his fear palpable. I can't. She's my wife. The mother of. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I want you to have this. You deserve to know the truth. Just please, don't say it came from me. He left as quickly as he had come, leaving me with the portfolio a detailed blueprint of his wife's deception. The premeditation was chilling. This wasn't an emotional, impulsive act. This was a calculated, long-term heist. With this new evidence, Victoria filed for an emergency hearing. The forgery transformed the case from a complex family dispute into a clear-cut criminal matter. A search warrant was issued for Sophie's art studio, which officially uncovered the portfolio David had shown me. Forensics confirmed the signatures on the clinic documents were forgeries. The final hearing was a different affair. The mood in the courtroom was somber. Sophie's confidence had evaporated, replaced by a sullen, defensive posture. When Victoria presented the evidence of the forgery and the journal entries detailing the plan, a gasp went through the courtroom. My mother, sitting behind Sophie, looked not angry, but utterly bewildered, as if seeing her daughter for the first time. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. He found that the embryos had been obtained through fraud and forgery. While he reiterated that he would not and could not interfere with the pregnancy, he granted me full and sole legal parentage of the children upon their birth. He then referred the criminal findings to the district attorney's office for prosecution. As I walked out of the courthouse, I didn't feel the elation of victory. I felt a profound, aching sadness. I had won my children, but I had lost my sister and irrevocably broken my family. The months that followed were a surreal blend of legal procedure and nursery preparation. Sophie, on the advice of her new criminal lawyer, pleaded guilty to fraud and forgery in exchange for probation and mandatory psychological counseling. We communicated only through our attorneys. A court-appointed mediator helped us draw up a parenting plan for the birth, a sterile document for the most intimate of human experiences. I would be in the delivery room. The babies, a boy and a girl, would be given to me immediately after birth. Sophie would have no parental rights or responsibilities. During this time, Ethan's parents, Catherine and James, who had been horrified to learn the truth, became my rock. They flew out from their home in Boston and helped me find a new house to rent, a larger bungalow not far from my old one. They came with me to buy 2 cribs, 2 car seats, 2 of everything. Their quiet, unwavering support was a testament to the family we built, not just the one we are born into. My own parents began a slow, painful journey back to me. My father called first, his voice thick with regret. "I don't understand your sister, Clara. We got it wrong." My mother's apology came in the form of a fragile, tearful visit weeks later. "I thought I was protecting her," she whispered, sitting in the half-assembled nursery. "But I was just enabling her. I failed you both." Our relationship would need years of careful rebuilding, but the foundation for it was finally laid. The day the twins were born was gray and drizzly, a typical Portland February day. I stood in the operating room, a sterile observer to a miracle that felt both mine and not mine. Sophie lay on the table, a curtain shielding her from the proceedings, her face turned away. Then came the first cry, sharp and vital, followed by a second. Leo and Nora. A boy and a girl. They were whisked away to be cleaned and checked, and then a nurse placed a small, swaddled bundle in my arms, and then another. Looking down at their tiny, wrinkled faces, at Leo's tuft of dark hair so like Ethan's, at Nora's determined little frown so like my own, the legal battles, the betrayal, the anger, it all faded into the background. Here was the future. Here was the joyful noise. Here was Ethan, looking back at me through two sets of new eyes. I took my children home to a house filled with the quiet love of their grandparents. The first year was a blur of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and an overwhelming love that expanded to fill every corner of my life. I learned to be a mother on my own, but I was never alone. Friends from work, my neighbors, and most of all, Catherine and James, created a village around us. My career path shifted. I took a position with the city that allowed for a more stable schedule. My work was no longer about escaping into grand plans for faraway places, but about grounding myself here, building a safe, beautiful world for my two small children. Sophie and David divorced. She finished her probation and moved to another state, never attempting to see the children. I receive a card from her on their birthday each year, with no return address, signed simply Sophie. I put them in a box for the day when Leo and Nora are old enough to understand their complicated, miraculous story. My relationship with my parents is healing slowly. They are devoted grandparents, their love for my children a form of apology to me. We don't talk about Sophie much. Her absence is a quiet space between us, a reminder of how easily the blueprints for a family can be destroyed, and how much work it takes to build something new from the rubble. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, after the twins are asleep, I sit in the garden Ethan never got to design for this house, and I look at the life I have. It is not the life I planned. It is messier, harder, and more beautiful than I ever could have drafted. It was born from a profound betrayal, but it has taught me everything about forgiveness, resilience, and the fierce, unyielding nature of love. I lost a husband, and in a way, I lost a sister and the family I knew. But I found my strength, I found my boundaries, and I found Leo and Nora. They are my unplanned city, my chaotic and perfect home, the truest future I could ever imagine. Sharing this story is part of my own healing, a way of drawing a map of the landscape I've traversed. If you have ever felt your own life's blueprint torn apart by someone you trusted, know that the act of rebuilding is a source of incredible strength. The foundation may be fractured, but what you build upon it can be more honest, more resilient, and more truly your own than you ever thought possible. The journey is never easy, but the home you build for yourself at the end of it is worth every difficult step.